The convergence of the true, the beautiful, and the known. Three positions within one fractal structure. The separation and its costs. For most of Western philosophy's recorded history, three questions were asked together, and the answers were felt to belong together. What is real? What is good? What is beautiful? Plato held all three within the form of the good, which was simultaneously the source of truth, moral reality, and beauty. Not three separate excellences, but one radiance, perceived from three angles. The tradition after him steadily pulled them apart. By Kant, the separation was formalized into three distinct critiques: pure reason for truth, practical reason for the good, judgment for beauty. By the 20th century, they had become not merely separated, but mutually suspicious. The true became the territory of science, empirical, verifiable, stripped of value. The beautiful became the territory of art, subjective, personal, incapable of the objectivity truth required. The good became the territory of religion or culture, relative, contested, resistant to rational demonstration. Each domain claimed its portion of the whole and defended the boundary against the others. The cost of this separation has been considerable. A science that cannot ask whether its findings are beautiful tends to mistake elegance for ornament and efficiency for value. And aesthetics that cannot ask whether its forms are true tends to mistake novelty for depth and decoration for form. And ethics that cannot ask whether its principles participate in what is tends to mistake the rule for the ground and compliance for genuine moral conduct. The three critiques separated, each lose something that can only recover from the other two. The Inner Hero Project's framework does not propose to synthesize these traditions from above. It offers something structurally prior, a demonstration that the separation was never ontologically justified, that it was a consequence of the wounds noun grammar applied to the structure of reality itself, which divided it into manageable categories that was constitutionally indivisible. The convergence of the true, the beautiful, and the known is not a philosophical preference. It is what the structure of 1, 2, 3 honestly examined actually shows. Three positions within one structure. The claim requires precision. The three are not three things that become one through synthesis or reconciliation. They are one thing, the is, can, does structure, seen from three positions that are simultaneously available within it. The singularity was never divided. It was only perceived as divided by the framework that needed to manage it in parts. What the 1, 2, 3 formulation makes visible is that each of the three great domains of Western philosophy was already inhabiting one level of the structure, seeing the whole from that level's position, and then, lacking the structural account of all three levels together, treating its own position as the whole. The result was not three errors, but three partial truths, each claiming completeness it could not achieve alone. The true is what is seen from the position of one. Truth, in the deepest available sense, is not a property of propositions. It is a property of the is ground itself. The is level is constitutionally prior to any description of it, and therefore prior to any false description of it. The is ground cannot be false. It simply is. What the tradition calls truth, correspondence, coherence, non-contradiction, is the three-level attempt to render the one level's self-evidence into language. The statement, "Only what is true can be understood," is not an epistemological principle. It is an ontological one. What has no ground in the is level has nowhere to land, cannot be integrated, cannot solve at 0. Seen from 1, truth is not a quality attributed to propositions after the fact. It is the structural weight of what is pressing against every attempt to substitute what should be. The false statement does not fail a test of correspondence. It fails to participate in what is. And this failure is felt before it is demonstrated, aesthetically before it is logically, in the sense of something not landing that precedes any articulation of why. The is ground's self-evidence is prior to the apparatus of verification. Verification is the 3 levels attempt to honor what one has already disclosed. The beautiful is what is seen from the position of 2. Beauty is the direct perception of the can level's operation, the encounter between genuinely different positions in the field, producing at their interface the fractal complexity that neither pole could generate alone. This is why beauty always involves relation, the harmony of voices that are genuinely different, the coastline that is neither land nor sea, the poem that holds tension and resolution simultaneously without collapsing either into the other. Beauty is the 2 level made perceptible. It is the fractal at the interface seen. This account is not metaphorical. The essay on birdsong and the preceding inquiry into Rosenberg's please and thank you already disclosed the structural basis. The nightingale that sings beyond any territorial necessity is a creature in whom the is ground is overflowing through the can level encounter with the world into the 3 level expression of sound. The beauty we perceive in that song is our organism's detection of the is, can, does structure running faithfully. The recognition that the encounter is genuine, that neither pole has consumed the other, that the full hourglass is in motion. Beauty is truth perceived at the 2 level. It is the is ground expressing itself through genuine counter into form, and the perception of that expression before any concept intervenes. This is why the project holds that beauty is proof, not proof in the logical sense of demonstration, but proof in the older sense of testing, the organism's direct verification that the structure is faithful, that what it is encountering participates in what is, rather than substituting what should be. The aesthetic response is not a feeling projected onto the world by a subject. It is the instrument detecting the can level's integrity. The known is what is seen from the position of 3. The word known is chosen with precision here, and it wants to be distinguished from the good in the conventional ethical sense, not because the good is excluded, but because the known is more structurally accurate. The does level is the domain of the specific, the irreversible, the received. What has genuinely happened, what has been expressed through the can level encounter from the 1 level ground into the 3 level consequence, is the permanently real. It has been given back. It is now in the field's record of what has been, and that record cannot be edited. The known, seen from 3, is not the ecosystem's filing cabinet of accumulated categories. That is the known in the sense the kitchen document on the known and the new names, the lower chamber's insistence on itself as the whole hourglass. The genuine known, the 3 level consequence of faithful encounter with the is ground to the can level, is the specific, irreversible, beautiful consequence of the structure running truly. It is the protein that the DNA's faithful reading produces. It is the aurora that the Birkeland current generates at the interface of solar, wind, and atmosphere. It is the essay that arrives when the inquiry follows what the structure actually shows. From 3's position, both truth and beauty are retrospectively visible in the known. The known that participates in what is always beautiful, because it is always the expression of the fractal at the interface, which is the can level's signature. And it is always true, because it could not be permanently received by the field if it were not. The false has nowhere to land. What genuinely encounters the record of what has been is, by virtue of its entry, both beautiful and true. The gift is the proof, is the participation in what is. 3 names for one event. The locus of perspective, seeing from each position. The question of where the locus of perspective is not a secondary matter. It is the key to understanding how the 3 operates as a singularity rather than as a triad of related but distinct domains. The answer is that each position, inhabited fully enough, reveals the other 2 within itself, not as separate domains requiring integration, but as dimensions of the same structure seen from inside. To see from one is to see truth as the ground rather than as a property. From this position, beauty is visible as the necessary expression of the ground into form, the one level's inexhaustibility flowing through the can level encounter into the 3 level consequence. The is ground does not withhold its expression, it overflows. That overflow, passing through the genuine encounter of the 2 level, is always beautiful. And the known, what permanently enters the field's record, is visible from one as the ground's own acknowledgement of itself, the is ground recognizing in each specific irreversible consequence its own expression. From one, truth is primary. Beauty and the known are its modes of self-disclosure. To see from 2 is to see beauty as the event rather than as the quality. From this position, truth is the condition that makes a genuine encounter possible. You cannot have a beautiful encounter with a false premise. The dissonance registers immediately, aesthetically, before any argument. The 2 voices cannot genuinely harmonize if one of them is not sounding its own true pitch. And the known is what genuine encounter produces, the permanent consequence of the fractal's operation, the specific irreversible form that the can level deposits in the does level when it runs faithfully. From 2, beauty is primary. Truth and the known are its wings. The condition it requires and the consequence it generates. To see from 3 is to see the known as the revelation rather than as the record. From this position, truth is not what precedes the knowing, but what the knowing, faithfully conducted, discloses. The 3-level consequence, when received without resistance, when the organism can fully inhabit the does without the known's defensive insistence, reveals the 1-level ground that generated it. And beauty is the sign that the disclosure was genuine, the aesthetic response as confirmation that the 3-level consequence faithfully expresses the can-level encounter with the 1-level ground. Where the known is not beautiful, something in the encounter was not faithful. The dissonance is the detector. From 3, the known is primary. Truth and beauty are its verifications and its testimony. What the 3 positions share, and what makes them positions within a singularity rather than perspectives on separate objects, is that each one, when inhabited with full fidelity, opens onto the other two. There is no position within the structure from which the other two positions are absent. They are simultaneously available, always. The separation the Western tradition installed was not a discovery of three distinct domains. It was the arrest of perspective at one level, the noun grammar's insistence that the position it occupied was the whole. The wound's division and its resolution. The Western tradition's separation of the three domains was not arbitrary. It was the wound's noun grammar applied to the structure of reality at the scale of civilization. The wound requires legibility, stable, manageable categories that can be defended and administered. One singularity that is simultaneously true, beautiful, and known cannot be administered. It cannot be parceled into departments, funded by separate ministries, taught in separate faculties. It can only be inhabited, and the ecosystem cannot inhabit what it cannot manage from the known. So the tradition did what the ecosystem always does. It froze the verb into nouns: true, beautiful, known. Three stable categories, each with its own criterion, its own jurisdiction, its own specialists. And then it spent several centuries arguing about which one was primary, which one grounded the others, whether any of them could be reduced to any of the others. The arguments were genuine and the participants were brilliant, but the premise was the wound, that the three were separate, that the separation was real, and that the question was how to relate them rather than how to disclose the singularity they had always been pointing at. The resolution is not a new synthesis. It is the disclosure of what has always already been there. Science does not lose its truth when it recovers the beautiful. Art does not lose its beauty when it recovers the true. The known does not become less known when it is recognized as the specific, irreversible received expression of the encounter between the other two. Each domain, returned to the singularity, becomes more fully itself, not diminished by the recognition that it was never separate, but restored to the depth it could not reach while insisting on its separateness. This is the project's claim in its most concentrated form, that the structure of 1, 2, 3 is the structure within which the true, the beautiful, and the known were always operating, and that the recognition of this structure is not the end of inquiry, but its genuine beginning. From the separated domains, inquiry produces knowledge, art, and ethics. From the singularity, inquiry produces what the living inquiry protocol names as its mandate, what the structure of reality, honestly examined, actually shows. A note on this essay's own claim. This essay makes a structural claim about the convergence of truth, beauty, and the known. If the claim is correct, the essay itself should instantiate what it describes. It should be in some measure simultaneously true and beautiful and genuinely additive to the known. The reader is invited to apply the three tests directly. Does the account correspond to what is? Does it participate in the is ground rather than substituting a preferred formulation for an observed structure? Does it produce the response that beauty produces, the sense of inevitability, of neither pole having consumed the other, of the fractal running at the interface of the familiar and the new? And does it add something permanently to the known, something that once seen cannot be unseen, that changes what subsequent inquiry can reach? These tests are not rhetorical questions. They are the essay's own test. If the convergence is real, The account of the convergence should be self-verifying, not because it says so, but because the structure itself describes is the same structure that any genuine account must itself inhabit. The true, the beautiful, and the known are not properties this essay claims for itself. They are what any honest reader will either find or not find, and the finding or not finding is itself the demonstration. Only what is true can be understood. The beautiful is what the true looks like when it passes through the genuine encounter into form. The known is what remains when the encounter has been faithful enough to leave a permanent mark. These three are one. They always were. The work is to see it, and then to speak from that seeing as faithfully as the instruments allow.